Dear Leo, radiant soul of fire and resilience. Have you ever felt the quiet echo of someone watching over you, not with judgment, but with overwhelming love? Today, that silence breaks. Because your father, whether in body or only in spirit, is speaking. This is not just another horoscope. This is a sacred moment. You didn't find this video by accident. You were led here because your soul has been whispering questions into the void, and finally, the universe is answering. In this final stretch of July, when the sun, the very ruler of Leo, is at its zenith, a divine alignment is taking place. It's illuminating what's been hidden, restoring what's been denied, and most of all, unlocking what's already yours. Your father is breaking the silence from the other side. Not with words of sorrow, but with the truth your heart has longed to hear. You have been strong long enough. Now it's time to receive. This message isn't wrapped in coincidence or soft comfort. It comes with celestial force, because the time for hiding your pain is over. The time for reward is now. Think back, Leo, to the moments no one saw. The nights you smiled on the outside but cried when no one was looking. The battles you fought silently just to keep others from worrying. He saw it all. And from beyond the veil, he has worked to reroute your destiny, to clear your path from confusion, betrayal, and emotional scarcity. He's not just watching, he's intervening. The universe is shifting in your favor because a part of you, the part that kept the faith even when it cracked, refused to give up. And now, the silence is no longer empty. It's pregnant with blessings, messages, and miraculous timing. Before we go any further, I ask you to pause. What's the first number that comes into your mind right now? Drop it in the comments below. That is not random, it's an angelic code, a breadcrumb from your spirit guides and your father, confirming that you are aligned with this message. And while you're here, let me take a brief moment to share my deepest gratitude. Every like, every comment, every new subscription connects you to this healing family we've built here at Eternal Mindfulness. Your support means the world. It allows these divine transmissions to keep flowing, not just for you, but for the countless souls silently seeking light. Now, if you've been carrying the weight of being the strong one for far too long, if your heart has been quietly praying for something to shift, if you've sensed deep down that someone is protecting you in the shadows, then please, stay with me until the end of this video. Because what the universe is preparing to reveal to you is not only profound, it's personal. Tell me in the comments, what was it that pulled you here today, Leo? What is your soul hoping to hear? You have been called. You have been seen. And now you are about to be rewarded. There are moments in life when silence becomes heavier than words, when what remains unspoken lingers longer than anything ever expressed. And perhaps that's exactly where you found yourself, dear Leo. In the previous part of this journey, you were gently invited into a space of recognition, a place where your father's spirit, breaking through the veil of quiet, begins to whisper, "You have been strong enough." Not because he couldn't see your pain before, but because now, he knows you're ready to truly receive what's meant for you. This section unfolds like the turning of an old, familiar page. The image of the judgment card rises here like a sunrise after a long, starless night. But this card is not about judgment in the sense of criticism or punishment. It is about awakening. A call to rise, not from failure, but from forgetting. And that call doesn't come from the world, it comes from within. Or in this case, through the loving awareness of a father who still walks beside you, just no longer in the form you knew. The essence of Leo is brilliance, generosity, and fierce-heartedness. You are often the one to shine light where others sit in shadow. But what happens when the one who brings warmth begins to feel cold inside? When your light becomes a mask, and your smile a quiet cry for someone to notice that you, too, need to be held? That is what your father now sees. Not as weakness, but as the beautiful vulnerability that makes your strength even more sacred. And so, this message isn't about being told what to do. It's an invitation to soften. To put down the armor. To stop performing strength and simply be. Because the truth is, you have nothing left to prove. You've already shown the universe, time and again, what resilience looks like. But now, it's time for something else. Time to rest. Time to let yourself be poured into. This is where healing begins, not through force, but through presence. A gentle return to yourself. That's why, if your heart calls you, consider writing a letter. Not to be mailed, not to be shared, but simply to be written. To your father. To the version of him who may not have had the words when he was alive, but who now knows more than ever how much you've carried. Let the ink be a form of release. Not for him but for you. For the part of you that's been waiting for permission to feel. There's an ancient teaching that says, the fruit falls when it's ripe, not when we pull at it. In the same way, your next chapter arrives not because you force it open, but because something inside you naturally loosens. This moment, this exact one, might be the loosening. The beginning of a truth returning to you, that you were never forgotten, and never walking alone. Ask yourself gently, not with urgency but with honesty, have you ever felt a hand guiding you when no one was around? A sudden knowing in your chest? A decision that saved you before you even understood why? That may have been more than intuition. It may have been a father's love traveling through time and space, arriving just when you needed it most. So stay here a little longer. Let this space hold you. You don't need to fix anything today. You don't need to explain. Just let the words reach you, because your father isn't asking for answers. He's offering something rare, acknowledgement. And sometimes, that's all it takes to begin again. When we speak of strength, especially through the lens of Leo, it's often imagined as loud, bold, and unbreakable, like a roaring lion commanding attention. But real strength, the kind that transforms rather than performs, often looks like stillness. It looks like pausing when the world tells you to push. It looks like crying behind closed doors, and still waking up the next day with your heart open, even if just slightly. That's the wisdom of the Four of Swords, a card that arrives like a whisper after the storm, reminding you that healing is not the absence of movement, but the presence of stillness. It is a sacred retreat into your inner sanctuary, where no mask is required, and no energy must be performed. For Leo, this truth is especially profound. You were born under the light of the sun, guided by its warmth, driven by its desire to shine. People often see your confidence, your creative fire, and assume you're always okay. But what they don't see, what your father saw, is the quiet way you've held your pain, the grace with which you've walked through heartbreak while still trying to be everyone's source of hope. And now, he sees the fatigue behind your smiles. The yearning behind your silence. And he wants you to rest not because you are weak, but because you are precious. The universe doesn't rush the flower to bloom, nor does it force the wave to crash before its time. In the same way, your energy needs space to recalibrate, to realign with your truth. Leo, you don't need to roar to prove you exist. You simply need to breathe. There is a quiet kind of courage in rest. It's the courage to let go of the narrative that you must always be strong, always be the light. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to soften. To let yourself be seen not as the hero, but as the human. Not as the one who uplifts, but as the one who needs uplifting. And in that softness, something extraordinary happens. Your light returns, but this time, it isn't trying to rescue others. It simply radiates from within. In moments of deep weariness, small rituals become powerful. Try starting your mornings with the 478 breath. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 7, exhale for 8. Let your body recalibrate its rhythm. Brew a cup of chamomile or lavender tea not as a quick fix, but as an offering to your nervous system. Step into the morning sun for just 5 minutes. Feel the warmth on your skin. Remember that the sun rules you not just to keep you visible but to keep you alive. Color, too, is a language your soul understands. Wear or surround yourself with hues of sunset orangey, a tone that evokes both warmth and memory, like the golden light of childhood afternoons. This color can gently awaken the part of you that longs to feel safe again, held again. True strength does not come from what you carry. It comes from your willingness to put it down and trust that you are still worthy. Even now. Especially now. This moment in your life is not about acceleration. It is about integration. Rest is not a pause in the story. It is the story. The chapter where you stop chasing and start allowing. Where you stop holding and start receiving. Your Father sees this. He honors this. And in honoring your softness, He is guiding you back to the kind of power that doesn't need to shout, it only needs to exist. So give yourself permission to just be. You don't have to earn peace. You only have to allow it. There is a moment in every soul's journey when the air changes, when the stillness we've grown accustomed to begins to pulse with a quiet urgency, and something stirs within us before we can explain why. If you've been sensing that lately, dear Leo, it's not your imagination. What you are feeling is momentum. Invisible, yet undeniable. A shift that doesn't scream, but whispers, now. The Eight of Wands carries this energy. It doesn't ask for permission, it moves. It arrives like news from a distant land, like the clarity that floods your chest the moment after indecision finally dissolves. And this time, the message is simple: you've been chosen, not because you're perfect, but because you're ready. This readiness may not look like certainty. In fact, it rarely does. It may look like trembling hands still willing to try, a tired heart that somehow still hopes. And that's enough. The Ace of Wands arrives to affirm this, a new beginning, lit not by logic but by fire. That flicker you've been feeling lately, that nudge toward a project, a path, a possibility you thought was lost or foolish or too late? That's not noise. That's the flame. And in this season of your life, the flame is sacred. When we look to your Leo essence, ruled by the sun, we find a truth both majestic and humbling. You are the sign of divine expression, the one who creates not to impress, but to illuminate. Yet for far too long, you've been giving away your light, believing that only when others are warm enough will you deserve to be lit from within. But here's the thing, the universe is not transactional. It is reciprocal. What you give out of pure intention eventually spirals back not as an echo, but as expansion. That's the heartbeat of the law of attraction. Aligned energy cannot be lost. It multiplies. And you, Leo, are standing in the vortex of return. This is also where numerology becomes a mirror. If you are in a personal year 1, you're entering a divine reset, a clean slate written in courage. If you're in a personal year 8, destiny is moving like a current, offering results that reflect years of inner and outer investment. Both numbers whisper the same truth: you're not chasing anymore. You're activating. The star reminds us of what we forget when we're exhausted, that even after the tower falls, hope rises. That renewal is not a reward for surviving, but a promise written into the fabric of existence. When you hold your gaze toward the future, even while your past still clings to your bones, you are embodying resilience. And in doing so, you are aligning with miracles, not just the poetic kind, but the practical ones too. Financial relief, creative ignition, real opportunities, soulful connection. And it's all real because you are real. The magician seals this truth. You are no longer just waiting for signs, you are the sign. You carry all the tools: mind, body, emotion, will. You don't need to do everything at once. You just need to begin. Pick one dream, one step, and trust that the act of starting, no matter how small, is what calls the energy forward. So if something in you has been quietly aching to be seen, to be heard, to finally begin again, take this as confirmation. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are exactly where the door was always meant to open. Make a list: 3 things your heart has held back from out of fear. These are not goals. They are permissions. And if it feels aligned, write them below with the words, "Fire, I'm ready to open the door of destiny." That single act of intention may be the spark that changes everything. There is a kind of wealth that doesn't show up in bank accounts or titles, but in the quiet certainty that you are no longer carrying everything alone. In the previous part of this journey, you were called to open a door one you may have stood in front of for years without realizing you held the key. But now that door has creaked open, revealing not only the possibility of change but the presence of something more enduring: support. In this space, we meet the King of Pentacles, a figure that embodies grounded abundance, not the kind that burns out in flashes of gain, but the kind that roots itself in legacy and care. And here, Leo, is where the deeper message begins to unfold. You've been strong for so long. Resourceful. Independent. Always finding a way. But your father, whether in memory or presence, has seen what that strength has cost you. The nights you chose responsibility over rest. The decisions made out of survival, not joy. And now, something has shifted. Not because you stopped needing support, but because you finally stopped resisting it. The Justice card follows not as judgment, but as balance. It acknowledges what has been uneven in your journey, especially in how you've given more than you've received. There's a natural law at play here, one that reflects the truth of cause and effect, but not in the way we're often taught. It isn't karma as punishment. It's restoration. The understanding that when the soul has carried more than its share, life will eventually meet it with a quieter ease. This is not indulgence. This is correction. A return to symmetry. When you look at the Two of Pentacles, what you see is motion, but also the tension that comes with trying to keep everything in the air. Maybe that's been you, balancing the emotional with the practical, trying to make room for your dreams while staying rooted in reality. It's exhausting, even when it works. But here's the revelation: the support you need is already gathering behind the scenes. Your job now is to stop juggling just to prove you can. And instead, choose what matters most. Choose what stabilizes you. Let the rest fall. This is where self-help becomes less about willpower and more about clarity. If you've been spending to soothe rather than to sustain, pause. Not as punishment, but as inquiry. What are you truly craving? If it's peace, then no purchase can give it. If it's safety, no bank balance will fully deliver it. What restores your inner sense of wealth is often what costs nothing: time in the sun, a simple cup of tea, investing in what sparks the soul instead of what silences it. And yes, there's a time to open that new savings account, not out of scarcity, but as an act of devotion. Call it the Father's Gift Fund, if that reminds you that you're no longer alone in building a future. The color of fortune here is classic gold, not the flashy kind, but the dignified kind. The gold of sunlight through old windows. The gold of something earned without rush. Wear it or surround yourself with it as a symbol, not just of abundance, but of steady knowing. That you are finally entering a season where you don't have to sacrifice your joy for your survival. The Emperor concludes this sequence, not as someone who controls but as one who protects. Structure becomes sanctuary. Plans become power. And perhaps your father, whether through spirit or memorious, now offering you the energetic blueprint for lasting freedom. You're not just being supported, you're being fortified. So move forward, not with urgency, but with trust. This time, you're not building alone. And this time, the foundation will hold. Love, when it is true, doesn't demand that you shrink yourself, prove your worth, or wear masks just to be accepted. And yet, for so many of you, especially those who carry the radiant fire of Leo, love has often felt like a battlefield, a performance, or a puzzle we can never quite solve. But what if that was never love, just echoes of longing dressed in familiar patterns? In this part of the journey, we begin to recognize that love, in its highest form, is not about striving, it is about resonance. It does not ask you to chase or contort, it asks only that you return to your essence and let it be seen. The Ace of Cups flows into this space like a cool breeze after a long drought. It speaks of emotional renewal, a soft and unexpected opening of the heart. It is not forced. It arrives when you've stopped trying to control its timing, when you've stopped performing perfection. There's a teaching that says, when the mind no longer clings, what is meant to arrive finds space. This is that moment. When the noise falls away, and all that's left is clarity. And from that clarity, real connection becomes possible, not the kind that drains, but the kind that gently fills. Leo, you've likely experienced love that applauded your strength, your charisma, your confidence, but what about the child inside you who quietly needed to be seen without expectation? That child, the one your father always cherished in ways he maybe never knew how to say, is still within you. And the one who's coming or already standing quietly nearby will not fall in love with your image. They'll fall in love with your realness. With your laugh when it's unfiltered. With your tears when they finally feel safe enough to fall. With the depth behind your eyes that most people overlook because they're too distracted by your light. The Six of Cups reminds us that true intimacy often feels like remembrance. Not as nostalgia, but as familiarity that transcends explanation. You may feel like you've known them before because in some ways, you have. Their presence will feel like home, not because they rescue you, but because they reflect the parts of you that have longed to be witnessed without judgment. This is not a fairy tale. This is emotional maturity. This is the soft power of resonance. And if you've been in something that's dimmed your fire, something that asked you to carry all the weight, to settle, to stay silent, know that the ground beneath that structure is beginning to shift. Not as punishment, but as realignment. The love you're meant for is not built on performance or endurance. It's built on mutual recognition. Your father, in the way only he can now, is clearing the path. Not so that someone can fix you, but so you no longer feel you must fix everything alone. The Ten of Cups offers a glimpse of emotional fulfillment, not the surface level kind, but the soulful kind. The kind that says, I see you. All of you. And I choose you anyway. That love may show up in a relationship, or it may first show up as a new relationship with yourself. One where you stop making bargains, stop withholding, and start trusting again. Even in small ways. The World card completes this energy, not as an ending, but as a wholeness. You've walked through fire, and now you return to your center, not empty, but expanded. You're not here to be someone's answer. You're here to be met. And from that meeting, something beautiful begins, not because you tried harder, but because you finally stopped trying to be someone else. So if love arrives soon, let it arrive into the space of your truth. And if it takes longer, trust that the space you've made for it is already healing you. You don't need to earn what's already yours. You only need to allow it. Let your heart remain open, not to chase, but to receive. Let it echo softly in the way only love without condition can. You've made it to this moment here, with me, at the edge of something sacred. And I want you to know that this was never just a horoscope. It was a mirror. A remembering. A homecoming. Leo, your journey has never been ordinary, and neither has your pain. You've walked through so much of life holding space for others, wearing your strength like a crown even when your heart felt heavy. And yet, here you are, still standing, still shining, still listening for the deeper truth. This entire reading, every message, every card, has been gently guiding you back to one truth. You are not alone, and you were never forgotten. There is a love that has watched over you even when you felt invisible. A presence that knows the version of you behind the achievements, beyond the mask, beneath the fire. Your father, in his own silent way, has been that presence. Maybe he wasn't able to show up the way you needed when he was here. Maybe words were hard. Maybe life got in the way. But now, with nothing left to prove, he sees you fully and he is proud. There's something powerful about realizing you no longer need to run. No longer need to prove your worth by how much you carry, how much you give, or how much you endure. This is a new season. One where you are allowed to receive. One where blessings are no longer locked behind struggle, but unlocked through your allowance. Can you feel it? That subtle shift inside you? That whisper that says, you don't have to chase anything anymore, it's coming to you. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, what would it look like if I fully trusted that I'm supported? What would I say yes to? What would I stop tolerating? What would I finally create, give, open, love? You see, healing is not about waiting for everything to be perfect. It's about moving with the imperfection, knowing you're still guided. Your Father's message is clear. He has never left your side. He never will. And He's working behind the scenes in ways you can't yet imagine. Make sure you're safe, held, and honored. The Sun, Leo's celestial ruler, is your reminder. Your light was never meant to dim for anyone else's comfort. It was meant to warm the world without burning you out. And so, as this message gently closes, I want you to hold on to one thing: you were chosen. Not because you are flawless, but because you are ready. And your readiness is sacred. If this message resonated with you, if you feel that quiet truth echoing in your spirit, leave a comment below that simply says, I have been chosen. Because sometimes, just saying it aloud is enough to shift everything. And before you go, let me take a moment to thank you from the deepest place in my heart. Every time you like, comment, or subscribe, you're not just supporting this channel, you're expanding the reach of healing energy. You're helping eternal mindfulness become a space where more souls like yours can be reminded that they are not alone. Your presence here means more than you know. So stay with me. Let's keep walking this journey together. Because I promise you, Leo, the best chapters of your story are still being written. And this time, they won't be written in silence, they'll be written in light.